And then I am real quick going to grab some tissues just
Okay.
in case I need
Some
them.
tissues or toilet paper.
Bathroom tissue. Yeah, tissues.
Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray. Hello, Erin Green.
You almost said
How
that
are
in
ya?
a mocking sort of tone.
No, I'm not. I'm just like being nice.
Oh,
You
geez,
said that before.
I wouldn't
You
have
said that
expected
before.
that. I don't know.
I'm a very nice person to most people.
I'm nice a lot of the time to some people when I feel
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, when I'm up for it, when I've got the energy. Otherwise, How are you?
I'm pretty good. This
Yeah.
is the first, Michael and I were just talking about, this is kind of the first working day after Christmas for both of us. I mean, I think yesterday was a Monday after the holidays. So, I mean, can we just agree that that's like a soft re-entry into the real world where you,
I
like, you
wanted
check
it to
some
be.
emails?
It was a full-on work day for me. Yeah, it was a rough transition from Sunday to Monday.
Oh boy.
I spent
tough.
like half my day in here, be like, what is happening? Where am
I
I?
know.
What's going on?
I know.
What am I supposed to do?
What time is it?
What do I do for work again? Well,
We'll
because
find our
we've
groove.
all been really sick. So 2 episodes ago was our episode with Mark Breeden. And that episode, I was starting to get sick. This is 2 weeks later, and I'm still like on the
You
tail
still
end
have-
of it. Our girls
I
have been
can't-
sick, like no, like poor sleep and up early and awake in the
Oh.
night. And it's been a rough 2 weeks.
But I can't hear it
Yeah.
in your voice. I know you said you have the Kermit the Frog thing going on, but I can't really hear
No,
it.
I don't feel like that this morning. I just feel congested and
Yeah.
it's the same little sickness thing going on. So let me
No
tell you
fun.
about our Christmas. Okay,
Oh, please.
So, yes. So it was going to be different anyway, because my nephew tested positive for COVID. So his family wasn't going to be there, which was like the cousins that our girls play with. So that was kind of a bummer for them. Christmas morning, we're opening presents like at 8 a.m. and there's a knock on our door. And we're like, okay. So we open the door. It's 2 neighbor kids from down the street. It's one of Lada's best friends and one of Sophie's best friends. And the oldest girl, she's like, can we hang out here for a little bit? My brother cut his arm open and my parents are calling 911.
Oh, geez.
Like, yeah, come on in.
Of course.
Of course. But it was a weird shift, right? For like 8 a.m. on Christmas morning.
Yeah.
And they're, of course, like both just everything shifted because they were like really upset and worried and concerned. And he was okay. He
Well,
only
and
needed
it's
a few
Christmas
stitches.
morning. Like,
Yeah.
you're usually opening gifts and like
Yeah, so we're like,
playing with
okay,
your toys and
sit
still in your
down and
PJs.
We'll finish opening our presents. But like they were just freaked out, like it wound up he only needed like 3 stitches, but he cut himself in a way there was a lot of blood. And so they were both like,
no.
like at one point, the younger brother was just like started crying and, super sad. So anyway, we go through Christmas, have our Christmas. And then we were supposed to go to Kathleen's mom's at 2. And like she's like 3 minutes away, about 1:45, I think. Kathleen was like, my aunt just fell and they can't get her off the ground. Can you go help them? So I drive over there and like she can't get up at all. And so we wind up calling the paramedics for her. Turns out she cracked her shoulder and her kneecap. It's going to be like in rehab for like 6 weeks.
Oh, no.
So
How old
like
is she?
Late 60s, early 70s in there.
Oh, falls are so tough.
Yeah. She tripped on her shoes and just fell right on the tile floor.
Oh, shoot.
And so then we're over there for Christmas and like she's gone to the ER. Kat's other aunt went to the ER with her. And then Kat's mom left a little bit later. It's like we didn't have a Christmas dinner as a family. And it was just a weird Christmas day.
My gosh.
We were all just kind of like, okay.
You guys
Merry
could just start
Christmas,
your
I
own
guess.
National Lampoon's version of Christmas
What the hell is
Day.
happening?
All the
What's going
things.
on?
Your tree didn't burn down though, right? And
No,
you
it
didn't like
didn't. No,
light your cat on fire or anything like
no,
that.
nothing like that. But it was wild.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
That's
all right. It wasn't bad. It was just weird.
lame.
It was just like, okay, it's just more other things than
Like, is
Christmas.
it Halloween, like a full moon, or is it
Yeah,
Christmas?
like
Like, what's going on?
candid camera here. What's going on? How was your
Hmm.
Christmas?
It was pretty low key. We ended up just staying in Boise because the weather driving north to my parents was insane. Like
Mm,
5 to 6 inches of snow on the roads day after day after day after
dang,
like continual
just
snowfall.
accumulating.
Yeah. And we're like, we've driven in some pretty crazy snowstorms before. And first, it's never fun. Like you're totally on edge the whole time. Like your shoulders are
Mm,
cramping up because you're just like
it's
so
just
tense. And,
stressful. I hate
and
driving in
it
snow.
takes forever to go anywhere, because you're just
Hmm.
driving so slowly. And then just thinking about trying to come back after all of that snow accumulation. So we're like, screw it. So we
Don't
stayed
blame
here,
you.
just had a low key Christmas, first Christmas in our new house. So that was nice. And
Yay.
watched some Christmas movies and decorated cookies. And I went for a snowy run and
Yeah,
with a friend. It was nice.
nice.
Pretty
We
chill.
may have we may have talked about this. So do you have a favorite Christmas movie?
Um, I think Christmas Vacation is probably my go-to. Like the humor
Yeah,
just never gets old, but I have a lot that I love. Like every
just
year
like
we've
a
got to
lot of
kind of
them.
tick the boxes and watch those Christmas movies.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Hmm.
All right. Well, shall we dive in?
Let's.
All right. I forgot what we called this. So I
We
where is it? Try to pull it
Sorry,
up
you
on my
guys.
computer. So
We're
it's
really
so slow.
organized today. You can tell that we're both really into this and we're on top of our schedule and our
We
brains are
are.
in full work capacity. All the things are clicking. So I really am so
There it
glad
is.
that you're
I
bearing with
found it.
us today.
I found it. I had to find a calendar because I was like, I know what we're talking about, but I can't remember what we called it. Yeah, so we are talking about the whole idea that parents, your kids are watching. They're watching you. They're always watching. It's like a start to a horror movie trailer.
Well, after your Christmas, it kind of makes sense with
Right?
the
Yeah.
blood and the cut open arm.
Yeah, for real. So we
Well,
just thought the whole idea of, as parents, or not even as parents, but just like as anyone who has children in their lives, like aunts, uncles, that cool best friend kind of thing to mom or
mhm,
whatever, if you have kids who you have some sort of influence over, or has some sort of standing in their life, I guess, um, they're paying attention to what you're doing.
mhm,
And with that comes, I think, a lot of responsibility, but also, I think, a lot of really cool things that you get to do because they do hold you on a pedestal. And especially little kids, like, I don't know, around 10, 11, 12, I think things change. But younger kids, like, if you're like a special adult, like, you're a superhero. Like, they're shocked when you can't do things. You know what I mean? Like,
mhm.
you're larger than life. And it's a really cool opportunity to not only fulfill that responsibility, but also to, I think, set the stage for them to to live life differently than they may, or think about things differently than they may, and that kind of stuff. And we just wanted to chat about that.
Yeah. And having worked in the WIC program for over 10 years, I worked with parents and,
Mm,
babies and children up to age 5. And so we talked a lot about this. How do you set up your household and your lifestyle to impart certain behaviors and interests
mhm,
in your children? And I think it's a really important point to say children are constantly learning and observing the world around them,
right.
and parents or any adult with a child in their life, like you said, aunts, uncles, the cousins, maybe you're a neighbor and maybe
Mhm,
you're a teacher and you're around kids all the time, but kids are constantly observing what others are doing, and especially those adults to look up to, or even the
mhm,
older siblings. How do you set that up? And one of the main things that I talk about is picky eating when it comes to this, because you don't know how many parents I would talk to that want their toddlers and their preschoolers to eat certain foods. mainly fruits and vegetables, healthy snacks. They want them to eat protein foods. And when I would get into, well, what does the family eat? How do you set this up as a family? There often was a lot of, well, I don't really like them, but I know it's important for my child to eat them. And so
Right.
I would often kind of dig into that a little bit. Well, why is it important? And I'd say, this might sound like a dumb question, and I'm asking it to hear you express why this is important for you to have your child do this behavior. Because if you understand why it's important for you to instill this in your child, then it will make it easier to keep going in that direction and persist with some of this, consistency with these foods. And so we'd have that conversation and talk about it. But then a lot of times it came down to, it's really important for parents to eat these foods with their children. It's really important for you to prepare these foods in your kitchen and show your child where they come from in the grocery store, and, help them see that this is a normal part of how we all eat, and everybody eats the same foods. Everybody eats the vegetables at the table. Everybody is having, steak and not chicken tonight or whatever. So it's just kind of helping the child see that, like, this is what we're all doing as a family, including the adults, because the kids will totally pick up on that. Like, well, dad doesn't eat his, roasted carrots. Dad doesn't have anything green on his plate. Mom doesn't eat this. Yeah. So.
And this is, okay, here's my first turn down an alleyway here. It'll be a quick one though. That is like, honestly, one of my biggest beefs, like with parenting, just in general, not even around like, exercise and fruits and vegetables or that kind of stuff, but just in general is that, and I'm probably guilty of this too. My awareness of it is high. And so I really try not to, but like when it's parents have higher expectations for their kids than they do themselves, when around food or the way they communicate, grumpy days, that kind of stuff. When
social behaviors and
is higher for children than for adults. It's like, wait a minute. Like, first of all, there's the whole thing we're talking about today. Like, you're setting the example. So where are they getting this from? Right. And two, don't you have like more maturity and like have hopefully worked through a lot of this stuff? Then you should be way more equipped to be able to behave this way than your 7-year-old. But they have to, it's just it. Well, it's
and
crazy.
Isn't it funny how adults seem to justify if they have road rage, for example. And I don't mean like the road rage where you're like, about to cause an accident. I mean like you're cursing at this person because they're driving too slowly or they didn't use their signal or something. The less egregious kind, but still problematic, because if your kid is in the car, that is the equivalent of a tantrum. All right. So if it's not okay for your child to throw a tantrum, why is it okay for you to lose your temper and your cool and yell at the driver or be rude to the person in the checkout line or any of these other things? So I think you're right that a lot of times parents sort of lose sight of how their own behavior and actions are showing their child how to behave versus what they're actually like trying to coach their child to do. Your behaviors and your actions are actually more powerful for your child to observe and then behave that way.
Yep. And I think when we find ourselves in those situations as parents or, just influential person to children, like it's going to happen. Like, I mean, I'm not, we're not saying like you better be perfect all the time, because we don't preach that at all. But like when it does, I think it does give you a really cool opportunity to like own up your mistakes to a child. And that's something I don't think you see a lot with parenting, is like when a parent like comes to a child and is like, hey, I was wrong and here's why. And here's why it wasn't okay for me to talk like this or act like this or do this or whatever. And I'm sorry, like I think that does provide a really powerful opportunity to one, like just like demystify your perfection a little bit and be like, listen, yeah, sure, I'm larger than life, but I'm not. I'm just a dude trying to get through my days too.
Right.
And
right. We're all just
what the hell
guessing here.
like there's no playbook here. I don't know. But it also, I think it really reinforces just this idea that like they're human, and they deserve to have those experiences and to be apologized to, that kind of stuff, just as much as an adult would. Just because they're 5 or 10 or whatever, doesn't mean like they deserve less of that. In fact, I think it's even more important for them. So it does, when you screw up, it does provide a really good opportunity to, I think, show them like, hey, you own up to your mistakes, and it's okay to be wrong, and it sucks, but you get through it. And here's how we practice forgiveness and, accept grace and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool.
And it teaches them vulnerability, which in the words of Brene Brown, you cannot have courage without vulnerability. So I think that's also a good lesson for kiddos too. And I mean, this kind of reminds me of the parents that I see, I should say the adults that are influencing children in their lives, that are setting big goals, So I come from the world of triathlon, and I have seen those adults that are like systematically setting goals to work on things for their triathlon endeavors, whether they're doing, a short local race and they've just never put this together before and they don't know what they're doing. I think that's really good for kids to see that there's people of all abilities and all backgrounds, putting their effort into this race, and bodies of all shapes that are doing this event. I've seen several of my friends who have become moms over their triathlon careers. So like maybe they started racing before they were a mom, and then they had a child, and they have really embraced what it means to teach your child, like not only a woman pursuing this physical feat, which I think is still one of those, kind of socially like rocky kinds of, topics to talk about, because a lot of times we just are socially inclined to accept men go do those things. But, a mom, maybe, we're breaking down those barriers, but I think it's
there
good for
is
kids
that
to see it.
stigma. Yeah, absolutely. But there is, and I think it's gotten better. But like, I mean, in the 13 years I've been coaching, I think the difference from when I first started coaching to now, it's a lot different. It's still not good, but it's better. And so I think things are moving in the right direction. But I've experienced a lot of that. Like, if a mom comes to the gym and works out, I mean, people would make comments about like, well, where are her kids?
I know.
Like,
I know.
Like, first of all, why is it any of your business where her kids are? Second of all,
where are your kids?
Well, you've heard of like grandparents and babysitters. Like you're familiar with this concept, right? Like sometimes someone else watches someone's kids, but just this idea of like, well, like almost like it's a selfish act or something. Like you're being irresponsible, and sure, there's probably both ends of the spectrum that could exist in that situation. It depends on a million different things. But I do think, kind of overarching for all this, and I want to get more into like specifics too, but like just kind of overarching, I think one of the best things as a parent or an influential adult that you can do for a child is to model for them that self-care, and even to some degree, like quote unquote, being selfish is a good thing. That taking care of you and prioritizing your health and your well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like this is important. It should be a priority, because taking care of these things allows you to take better care of everything else, of your finances, your home, your relationships, your family. Like it just, you operate like in a bigger way and on a higher level when your self-care, when you take some of your energy and you put it inward, when you take time away from them to work out, to meditate, to whatever it is, that this time for me lets my time with you be a lot more beneficial and better and beautiful.
I think I've shared this story on here before, but in case we have some new listeners who haven't heard it before, I'm going to share the story of a woman. When I was going to the YMCA and I would go early morning for swimming, there was a woman in the locker room talking to another person, and I was eavesdropping, totally admitting that, because she was right in the locker next to me. So I was overhearing this conversation.
You can't not, right?
And one of them was like, the one woman was like, "It's so good to see you. How's the new baby?" So obviously this other woman had a baby at home, and she's like, oh, we're kind of through that phase of like not knowing what time it is or what day it is, and we're getting into a rhythm, and we're finally finding our flow. And then they asked about how is so and so like being an older sister. So obviously there's a like toddler age in this situation too. And the mom was like, well, she loves it, but she really has a hard time with not having that mom time with me anymore, that one-on-one mom time. So we're really trying to prioritize that.
Mhm.
And this little girl was constantly like crying when mom would leave in the morning to go to the gym. So she was saying that it was really hard for me to get to the gym every morning because, or not every morning, but when she would go in the mornings, the child would cry and mommy, stay with me. And oh my gosh, I mean, I'm not even a mom, and it's pulling at my heartstrings, like,
Mhm.
just, geez, okay, we'll
Mhm.
just stay and cuddle. But the mom said that she would tell her little girl, honey, I will be a better mommy if I go to the gym. So we'll do this. And she would, reassure her, we're going to do
Mhm.
this when I'm back, or we'll do this later today or tonight or something. But she was just reinforcing that I will be a better mommy if I go do this thing. So I
Yeah.
think that's important also to everything you're saying about self-care and showing your child that it's important to take care of myself and to do these things, even though some
Mhm.
people might think it's selfish, it actually helps you bring the best version of you to the world. And it
Mhm.
shows your child or any child in your life that if you do those things, you can actually be a more balanced human being in other aspects of your life. And so I just think about that mom all the time. And I'm like, man, I mean, first of all, having a baby and a preschooler or toddler at home is like,
Yeah.
geez, that's a lot
Yeah.
to cope with and to deal with. And so
Mhm.
getting to the gym at all is like, a huge feat.
Mhm.
The fact that she had the wherewithal to like just keep reinforcing to her child, like, I will be a better mommy if I,
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm
great.
sure it gets easier over time for your child to understand that like, oh, this is just the routine, this is what
Yeah.
happens. So
Yeah. And that's a great story. And I think it brings up a great point is that like if we have the opportunity to just like demonstrate that these things are just part of how we live life. You know what I mean? That that whether it's going to the gym and working out or just being active through let's go for a bike ride, let's go for a walk around the block,
mhm,
let's make sure we get outside today and get some sunshine and run around, jump on the trampoline or play tag or go to whatever it is, that this is just part of what we do on a regular basis.
mhm,
We make food that is like nourishes our body on a regular basis. We come together and when we're at odds, we're gonna talk through it. You're gonna have the opportunity to tell me your experience and your frustrations, and I get the opportunity and we'll work through this. Like this is just how we do things.
mhm,
And when kids grow up, I mean, I think we all kids grow up in their whatever their home life is like with a this is the way we do things kind of thing,
mhm,
right? Like that's
mhm.
happening regardless. And I
Yeah.
want to talk about some of the negatives of that in a second. But like if we can try to build your regular routine and develop it in a way that includes healthy things, then these kids are a lot more likely down the line to continue to do that because we really do we operate with how we see the world, with how we, I mean, like just how we do trivial tasks around the house with in the way that we grew up seeing them done because that's what we know. And so if we know that on a regular basis, yeah, we just move our bodies and we eat fruits and vegetables and we cook,
Mhm,
super healthy meals and like then that's just what their life is probably going to be like because that's how they
mhm,
know to live life. You're literally showing them this is how you operate day to day.
mhm.
And so whatever you show them, this is how you operate day to day, they're probably going to operate day to day.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons there.
And I'm going to present one of the cons because back to the whole picky eating thing. Okay, so I
Mhm.
have worked with a lot of adults who are picky eaters as adults, and they realize that this is not serving them well, and they want to adjust that and
Mhm.
change it. And when we kind of dig into where this came from, it really comes back to how they were raised and their exposure
Yeah.
to different foods and you know that sort of thing. I've also worked with adults who have teens in their lives that are, I do a lot with teenage nutrition and adolescent, athletes and that kind of thing. And the parents are like, oh, they're so picky and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, how, tell me how this has played out in your home. And we kind of,
Right.
again, work backwards, and we find out that there's this, I think, belief that a lot of adults and parents in particular fall into, where their children are young and they're like, oh, it's just a phase. They're going to grow out of this picky phase. Oh, they
Mhm.
won't eat anything, so I'm just going to give them what they want, kind of thing. Or, these are the only food I know that if I make chicken nuggets, my child will eat them, and I can't stand to not see my child eat. So I'm going to just make chicken nuggets,
Mhm.
on like short order cook style anytime my kid wants them. So we kind of fall into some of these traps that, even though it's at odds with what the parent wants for their child and what they know is good for their health, they fall into this like immediacy. Like, how do I take care of this
Mhm.
situation right now and deal with today and this meal right
Mhm.
now, versus kind of thinking long term and a little more systematic about it. And it's really, as a dietitian that works with all different ages, um, I think it's really important for people to know how this plays out, and usually how this manifests. Um, and again, this is the way it is in our house. And so, what are you teaching your child by
Mhm.
instilling these kinds of practices? You're not teaching them that we all eat the same meal. We're not getting any special foods. You're not teaching them that we always have, a vegetable at dinner and everybody takes a bite or whatever, we all eat it. You're not teaching them to be curious and explore different foods and be brave in that
Mhm.
way. You're teaching them that they don't have to do any of those things, that this is just the way we eat. So I'd,
Right.
I'd encourage people kind of to examine some of those behaviors and practices in their homes too.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think it's, as a parent, I get it. Like there are some times where you're going to just be like, yeah, what's the easy thing? Like it's been
Right.
a crazy
PB and
day, or we're
J's,
in a
here
pit.
we go.
Yeah, for sure. Like, okay, you want a peanut butter and jelly and you want chicken nuggets, cool. Like that's going to happen sometimes. And that's fine. Just like it's going to happen sometimes that you randomly stop at Jack in the Box and
Right.
eat way too much and are uncomfortably full. And it's fine. It's not a big deal. But we also want to look at like what is being done consistently. And and just piggybacking on what you're saying, like if we're consistently like, okay, you just get whatever you want and you don't have to try what was made, that like this is forming how they're going to like
Right.
operate, right? And what they're
Mm-hmm.
going to expect later on in life. And one example, and I'm curious if you've heard this a lot, because I've heard this one a lot from
Mm-hmm.
clients, going back to like the uh, what we were sort of like what was instilled in us as a kid.
Uh-huh.
Um, one of the biggest like struggles with meals that I encounter is people feeling guilty for not eating all their food. And so they wind
The
up
clean
over,
your plate club. Yeah.
yeah, the there are starving kids in Africa club. And I don't know where
Right.
this came from. Like I don't know how all our parents knew to like beat this into our head. Like and I think we've talked about this before. Like, well, are you going to send this food to them if I don't eat it?
I
Like,
know. Like,
it's
you're
not
just
going to
guilting
get to
me
them.
into
And
eating.
if you're
Yeah.
so concerned, then how about you send some of your money down there to like feed them? Okay. Like, why is it my job as a
We're not
6-year-old?
encouraging any 5-year-old listening to say this to their parents.
But at the same time, come on,
Send your
parents, like
money down there, mom.
use a little logic. I mean, that food's not going to them. But like, because like so many people grew up with this like being in the like
Mm-hmm.
you eat everything on your plate. There are kids who don't have food in the world and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
And so be grateful for this. And it's like, oh, so being grateful for having food to eat is now getting mixed up with I have to eat past my point of
Mm.
comfort.
Yeah.
And okay, now we've got some real screwed up thoughts,
Yeah.
and I've worked with a lot of people who have really struggled with not overeating,
Mm-hmm.
because with throwing food away or not
Mm-hmm.
clearing their plate, because it was
Mm-hmm.
it was beat into their heads every single meal as a kid that they didn't want to finish or just didn't like, or were too full or whatever. Doesn't matter, you eat everything on your plate. And so they've grown up their entire lives like having this guilt associated with feeling full and quieting their fullness cues. How do you
Right.
think that plays out as an adult?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be dramatic, but this stuff matters. It really matters. It's
Sure. And
seriously
then
important.
eating turns into a job. Like you get your job done. You clean your
Mm-hmm.
plate. And I run into this too with adults where we talk about like being mindful about how you eat and the flavors of food and the texture and, just sitting with your food and not like distracting yourself with computer work or with,
Mm-hmm.
TV or something else, because it really helps you get back in tune with those hunger and fullness cues because we all have them. You
Mm-hmm.
may have gotten out of touch with them. You may have
Yeah.
ignored them for years, and it doesn't always come back right away. You have to
Yeah.
kind of practice it and make some observations. But I think I run into this a lot too, where people, first of all, portion size and serving size are sort of skewed sometimes because of different, cultural beliefs. I've worked with clients who have identified as, quote, the big girl or the big boy. And so their family from a very young age or the adults around them used to encourage them to eat because they're such a big boy. You eat like a
Mm-hmm.
big boy. Oh, wow. And they marvel at how much food this kid will put away. And all of a sudden that reinforces, oh, that's part of my identity is I'm a big
Right.
eater.
A big
And
eater.
so then they
Wow.
start doing
Yeah.
that. Wow. And there's lots of praise going on. So I've seen that happen too. And then when we do the work of getting back in touch with those hunger and satiety cues and really listening to that, then as you're saying, there can be like some guilt and some real discomfort around eating less and being satisfied with less. Or on the flip
Mm-hmm.
side, eating more and realizing, wow, that's what fullness feels like instead of,
Right.
being such a little eater. And so I think comments around how much a child eats, whether they're a quote good eater or a big eater or eat like a bird. Um, I think those are just really important things to think about as an adult,
Right.
how you talk to a child about their eating habits and style, and really being careful about praising certain eating behaviors. Instead, maybe reflect it in a way like, oh, look at that. You tried one bite of everything on your plate. What was your favorite? Something
Mm-hmm.
like that, that has no um, moral ground or
Right.
praise attached to it, or good or bad or indifferent. You
Yeah.
just you make some observations about things. Oh, you
Mm-hmm.
poured that juice by yourself. Good job. Things like that. And I think we've talked about this in previous episodes with kids too.
Mm-hmm.
Just those things to say at a mealtime or in feeding environments. I think it's really important for parents to just be aware of what message you're sending your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of commenting on food that needs to not happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, I don't know that you could really distinguish between like a comment and an observation. Maybe they're the same thing, but like, we've talked before about like, we're going to have like some, not rules, but like, here's how we're going to eat. Like, you're going to try everything. And if you don't like it, cool, but you need to try a bite. Like you need to try it. You need to experience, you need to explore it, you know? And I think you can reinforce those things. But when we, like you're saying, when we start commenting about like how much or how little or how fast or how slow, like that kind of stuff, like then we begin to, like you said, like find identity in that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we're heading down a bad road real quick, and I think there's just so much talk around food. There's so much communicated around food that we don't realize what we're really saying, what we're downloading into our kids,
Mm-hmm.
as ways to view it and view themselves as eaters and that kind of stuff, that it's really picking a lot apart. And this is my thought on that, is like, I would love to raise my kids in a way where I don't encourage any of the negative things that I like grew up thinking or had instilled on me. Right. That would be wonderful. Like as far as
Mm-hmm.
anything, relationships and faith and food and my body, whatever, just all the
Mm-hmm.
things. That's not going to happen. Like, right.
Right.
Like it's just not going to happen. So I think as parents, if we can, one, let go of that and just adopt the fact, like, listen, if I do some of that and they grow up with an advantage. Like maybe I don't take care of all the things, right? But I take care of some of them and they're better off. But that's the best you can do. That's the ultimate goal, is that they wind up as an adult better equipped to be a really healthy person. And you don't have to do this perfectly, but man, if we can like take away some of those shackles and those like weird mental constraints that we grew up with, and they don't have those, cool. And then they get to do that with their kids. And then this is how we go generation to generation. And hopefully we raise, healthier, more compassionate, externally and internally empathetic people. And I think that's pretty amazing work. And if that takes generations, cool. Like if my kids are just better off, I'm really good with that. Like,
yeah,
you're not going to get this parenting thing perfect.
I think a big part of this work is also recognizing the things that have worked for you and haven't worked for you as an adult. And so, I think of something like, my dad was forced to eat certain foods that literally made him throw up, like the texture of tomatoes, for example, or he went through high school initiation because that was the thing back in the day. And he had to eat whole cloves of garlic and, things like that. And so to this day, he cannot eat those foods. Yet he has also, as we were growing up, there were certain foods that and certain manners of eating that it was clean your plate. It was eat that food. There's nothing wrong with that food. And so it's really interesting to me to see sometimes how, and again, I'm not a psychologist, and so I don't understand all the inner workings of this, but I think a lack of awareness on both fronts. First of all, what affects me in a way that is not serving me very well, and how do I prevent doing that to my child? But then also understanding there's another way. There's a different way to help my kid, and enjoy the kinds of foods that I enjoy and eat the way I do and enjoy the kinds of activities I enjoy versus forcing them and that sort of, authoritarian type of parenting. But again, these are all just ideas for people. We're not, telling you that one way of parenting is a better way or anything like that, but just really being aware of some of these things that you say and practices you put in place in your family, and just understanding that every practice and every message you're sending your child has repercussions and will carry with them. And so your kids are watching and they're listening. So they'll learn based on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think the whole, like the meal experience at home, a lot of times for kids, it's like if a group of adults went to a restaurant and one person decided what everyone was going to eat.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like that. And I think it's important to like think about it like that, because it's easy for us as adults to be like, just eat what's there. And sure, you need to try stuff. I 100% agree with that. But at the same time, like as an adult, I'm not going to like clean my plate with food that I don't like. Like that's insane. Why we would never do that. So again, this is kind of like what are the expectations of a parent and what are they as a kid? Do they align? Right? Are you going to eat a whole, half plate of veggies that you can't stand? Of course not. So why would that be the expectation?
Why would you expect
for your child? Right. Like they don't get to decide what they're going to eat. That's got to be a sucky experience. So let's understand that we need to give them the same opportunity to try something different or whatever that we would want, or that we would insist on having as an adult. We really need to do that. Yeah, I really think it's important that kids try new things and that what's on their plate that they try, if they only like one of 4 things, cool. Let them have a lot of the one thing, but also just like, remember what it's like to be a kid, because there are some of those situations that we put kids in that just suck and are unfair. And we would be irate if it was us in that situation as an adult.
And just because you've been eating green beans for 35 years or whatever,
right?
And your kid has maybe seen them like 5 times in their whole life, a lot of times we impart that like, well, I've been doing this for years. There's nothing wrong with this food. And I think this goes with physical activity as well. Like, well, you had a love of basketball and you played high school basketball and college basketball, and it was your life. And
Mm-hmm.
so you expect your child to just love it. Well, give it some time, maybe teach them some things, make it fun, do it
Yeah.
as a family activity, and let it just be what it is for your kid.
Yeah.
And, be careful of the pressure that comes into these situations to
Mm-hmm.
experience that situation the same way you would, or the way you hope your
Right.
kid would. So I think
Right.
that's important too, when we talk about, particularly with like, health, diet, fitness kinds of topics. As adults, we have a huge view of the world and a very deep,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, reservoir of experiences that we've learned from, and that have built our belief systems. Your child is just building those things. And so be
Barely getting
very
started.
aware
Yeah.
of that, with
Mm-hmm.
all of these things, all of the little things, from trying green beans with dinner to the big things of like, what what do you hope to do with your life, and in terms of a
Mm-hmm.
career when your child gets that age, all
Mm-hmm.
of these decisions, you're just really helping them observe what works well for them and opening the world up so they can experience it.
Yeah. And we often like we look at their situation from our perspective of like me, 41 years of experience. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, and so yeah, sure, I can see whatever there is going on with Mike. They don't have that experience. Like, like
Mm-hmm.
sure, I can share that with them and that can be helpful. I can try to help them see a bigger picture, but at the same time, like, but they only have their experiences. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's really stupid and hurtful to demand that they operate from your point of perspective. Like, it
Right.
doesn't make any sense, you know?
Right.
And then to piggyback on your illustration of your example, like, I grew up playing basketball. And so that's like what we do kind of thing. I think it's important that we don't like put those expectations on our kids. But two, I think it's really important that we let them know, like, you have permission to not like the same things I did, to want to do this differently, like to want to be physically active in ways that different than I grew up. Because here's an example. So I played Little League baseball. So like 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And then it came time to go to Babe Ruth, which was like 13, 14, 15, I think. And my dad played sports all through high school and college. He played college basketball and baseball. And
Mm-hmm.
he never, ever once communicated to me that that was the expectation for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not once. But I thought it was, because that's what he did. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought I was supposed to have this love of sports, right? And I remember where I was. We were driving in the car. We were at the corner of Alameda and 4th Avenue, right next to Albertsons. I remember where I was. We were at a stop sign waiting to turn right. And because it was a big moment for me. And I just started to cry. I was, I think, 12 years old. And I was like, Dad, I don't want to play baseball anymore. I'm really sorry, but I just don't like it. And da 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 da. And I thought I was like letting him down. And he
Oh.
was just like, okay, that's fine. You don't have to play baseball. Like, I don't care if you play
Oh.
baseball. But I had this expectation, or I thought there was this expectation. I had this assumption that because that's what my dad did, that's what I should do. And this will
Yeah.
make him happy and this will make him proud, all this stuff. So I think it's important, one, that yes, we don't communicate those expectations, but also communicate, you have permission to tell me what you think about this stuff. You have permission to do this
Mm-hmm.
differently. Just
To
because
form
I
your own
like things,
opinion.
yeah, it
Sure.
doesn't mean you have to like these things. Just because I like doing it in this way doesn't mean you have to. And like,
Mm-hmm.
and encouraging that, because that's where kids really, I think, get to flourish and develop. Like, who am I? I'm not some little, which I think we do too often as parents, is we raise kids as like mini us's, like
Yeah.
little mini
Yeah.
me's. That's not what we want, because they're not us. I'm sure they might have a lot of similarities and that kind of stuff, but they need to like know that they can charge into their own uniqueness, and
Mm-hmm.
I think giving them that permission is really, really important.
I yes, and that's a great story. And I love that concept of like allowing your child to come into their own and explore. And I think I had a thought that I just lost on that front, but
You pull the
I
Michael,
have, oh God, I know it's contagious.
adjust your hat and look at the sky
I
and see if
know.
it
Should
comes
I
back.
look at the sky and it'll come back? So I think I'm thinking of a family, some friends of ours that have two kids, a son and daughter. And this family is super active in the backcountry ski world and just, I mean, winters in general, but skiing really is their jam.
Mhm.
And the dad grew up around Jackson, Wyoming, and just backcountry skiing with his dad. And so it became this generational thing. Like, I want to teach my kids this stuff. And so they take their kids out and do these, crazy things. And their daughter's really gotten into like downhill skiing and racing and that sort of stuff. And they've done Nordic skiing, like all of it. And Matt and I always marvel, if we ever had kids, like, how would you never know what your kid's interest is going to be and how that's
Yep.
going to manifest. But like, how did they do this to where their family just loves? I mean, they love it. Like, the kids
Mhm.
love the snow. They love going out. It's a fun thing. I'm sure there's been a fair amount of bitching and moaning if it's too cold or if you're
Sure.
hungry or whatever, but I think what they have done really well is shown their kids how fun it can be
Mhm.
and shown them how much they love this. And I want to
Mhm.
share this with you because I love it so much, not because I want you to become this, high performance skier that does extreme stuff and makes it on the cover of magazines, or not because I want you to win competitions, or not because I think that's your path. I want to share
Right.
how much I love this with you and then open that up in their world and let it just be what it is. I think that has been a really cool development to watch in this family because they
Mhm.
started when these kids were really little, like just taking
Yeah.
them on the slopes and playing around and teaching them skiing. And they
Cool.
just loved it. Like, this is what we do
Mhm.
as a family. And so I think
Yeah.
like making that fun family time is a really big piece of that too.
Yep. I think that's the key, is not the activity, but the experience. Because there's a lot of things you could do, right? That you can make the experience, whatever you're doing, about us and
Mm-hmm.
whatever we're doing. Like, let's just like sink into being together and laughing. And if we make mistakes, we laugh about it and learn. And like, and I don't know this. I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know this at all. But my guess is that even if those kids weren't naturally inclined to like this, they love the experience together as a family.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
makes it like, yeah, even if I'm not crazy about skiing, I can't wait to go because it's so fun. It's such a great
Mm-hmm.
experience. And I feel valued and, paid attention to. And I get all my parents' attention and energy and focus. And, like, that can be a game changer. And I think that's the key, is create the experience and, you know, don't push the activity so much. Cause I think too often we push the activity,
Yeah.
as opposed to create the experience. But yeah.
So my thought came back when
Oh,
you were telling the story about your basketball or your baseball experience, not wanting to play
mhm,
baseball anymore, and how your dad was like, that's okay, like, you don't have to. I think this comes full circle around to what we started talking about at the very beginning, the self-care piece,
mhm,
because in order for a child to feel safe in expressing that this isn't working for me and I need something different, I think it's really important for them to have observed some self-care practices in their world from role models, whether it be an
yeah,
older sibling or an adult in their life. So I think this is another example of that, saying whether you are interested in these art classes that you're taking, or you'd rather,
mhm,
get into karate, or saying that, I really enjoy playing games with a family, or, I really just need some quiet time in my room to read by myself. A child being able to feel safe in expressing
mhm,
these kinds of things to an adult is really important. And they need to see you doing that in your world too. So whether
yeah,
that's, things that you think you're keeping private from your kids, like your work environment and
yeah,
how much you take on at work and how stressful it is,
Yep.
Your
Everything.
kids they will find that out. They will observe that, and they
A
will
hundred
start
percent.
seeing that, like, oh, dad has to leave early for work every night, or mom is coming home late every night and doesn't have time to do
Mhm.
these other things she enjoys. And so I think it's really important to just be aware of how you are practicing that self-care and how your kid is interpreting that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to, okay, I had two thoughts and I mentally made note of them as you were finishing up, and then I lost them both.
See, I know it's okay. We already established
How in the
that
world
this
does
is
that
the
happen?
first day after Christmas break, and we're kind of,
Yeah.
whoa,
Okay. So you were just talking about skiing
self-care,
and self-care. And okay, I lost the first one.
creating
I
the
have the second one.
experience
Yeah,
of,
I
it'll
lost one
come
of them.
back.
I
It's
found
all
the other
right.
one. So in in the spirit of like creating the experience around the things that you, oh, I remembered it. Okay, I'm gonna do the first one first. Back up. Starting over. Here we go. So I several times in my life I have heard this. Like if like a mom and a dad both had athletic backgrounds, I've heard them say about like their daughters, I don't care what they do as long as it's not cheerleading. Like they're not going to do
Oh,
cheerleading.
geez.
I'm like, whoa. Like, first of
Yeah.
all, that's 100% about you and not
Yeah.
them. Second of all, like, what if they're super interested in that
Right.
and really want to do it? What you've communicated to them is that's wrong. The thing you like isn't the thing you're supposed to like. And so you
Hmm.
need to learn how to not like it and like other things.
Yeah.
Ugh. Like that's
Yeah. Yeah.
disgusting.
Okay.
People don't think about it like that, but we do that a lot with things that kids are into. You know, we our own insecurities or whatever we put onto them, and then we try to make them different than what they are. And
Hmm.
then what does that say for their ability to understand how to operate in this life? Like your natural inclinations and your instinct, wrong. You don't know what's best for
Right.
you. You don't know what you really want. Okay, good luck as an adult, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah. And then the other thing is when you were talking about the experience and the action, is that I really think it's important as parents that the things that we love, we really do try to invite kids into that and create experiences. It's also really important that we do that the other direction. That when
Hmm.
your kid wants you to play Barbies or Ninja
Yes.
Turtles, you know, whatever, that we willingly join them and try to create that experience as a wonderful one.
Hmm.
Because it's easy as a parent to do those things and be like, "Oh, okay, like I'm just going to half-ass this and da da da." But again, expectations, right, that are misaligned. We expect kids to be like wholehearted into what we're into. It's like, well, then model that, because that's what we're talking about. Your kids are watching. And so if we model that, hey, when someone's into something and they ask us to join them in that, we do it wholeheartedly, not because it's about the thing, but because it's about the
Hmm.
person and the experience and the time together. So my encouragement to parents and other adults with kids in life is like, when a child asks you to join them in something or listen to a song that they like or tells you about a book that they like dive into that, because you're modeling to them what you like is important,
Yeah.
right? What you're into matters, just like I want you to care about the things that I'm into and that are important to me, and that we can create meaningful experiences around activities, even if we're not super into the activities, because it's not about that. It's about what we're doing together, what we're
Hmm.
creating together. So just a thought there. I'm having a lot of these
I
moments of
love it.
like
No,
misalignment of parent expectations and kid
no,
expectations.
I think that's a good way to kind of wrap this up, is just we've gone in a lot of different directions. We've talked about,
Yeah.
the food and picky eating in the mealtime scenario. We've talked about sports. We've talked about, life interests, and
Mhm.
even like, time management types of things, like how you want to best spend your time. I think the big overarching message here is, first of all, recognize that kids are constantly observing what you're doing and how you're living your life. They are listening. So, what messages are you sending them? And hopefully, this is also kind of a nudge for all the adults listening, because our audience is adults, and some of you have children, but some of you do not, but you might still interact with children or have an influence in some way with a child. Maybe this is a nudge to just be self-aware of the things you are doing in your life that you would be really proud to pass on to a child in your life. Some of the values, some of the practices, and belief systems. So
yeah,
that's my hope for you.
I think you're being nice saying a nudge. I would say shove, like figure it out.
Violently shoving them into this void.
I'm serious. The clock is ticking. Like you only have them for so long. Like figure it out and do it differently. Like quit dicking around. Like get it done.
Dicking around.
The clock's ticking. Yeah. Anyway.
So, do you have a meaning in the mundane to share?
I do. Yeah, I kind of already shared it, but I'm going to elaborate on it. And in the mundane, it wasn't like a routine thing, but it was Christmas morning. It was when we were opening our presents and we had that knock on our door.
The neighbors come over.
Yeah, the kids came in because, it was just like hey, what's going on? What's up? Oh, okay. It was just kind of confusing. Right. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but it was disruptive to what we were doing. It was like we were doing this thing and now, oh, okay. Not too long after that was just like, man, I really love that we have people in our lives down here, neighbors, friends, who like, it wasn't even a question to them if this was going to be okay. You know what I mean?
I know.
Hey, can we, they didn't ask us, they didn't send us a text, can our kids come down? It was just like, go to
the neighbors. Yeah.
And there was
on Christmas morning,
on Christmas morning at 8:00 in the morning, when everyone's doing family stuff, there was no question of like, if it was going to be okay, because they just knew, and we would know the same. And it was just a really good reminder. I don't know, whatever, to me, just of like, man, it's such a blessing to have people like that in your lives, where you just know, like, no matter what, this is going to be fine. Yep. We'll take care of your kids. You take care, like, don't worry about it, And so just like, it was just such a strange experience, but also it was just really cool in that, like, it's really nice to have these kind of relationships where you just know this is fine. It's not even, you don't even have to ask, just do it.
Yeah. I love it. Yes. And that's a very warm feeling too, just to know that
it was a very Christmas
feeling. Your home is always open. Yeah. To these kids. And oh, that's great. Well, mine was Christmas Eve morning, and it was just, I went to a class at the gym that morning, and it was dark when I got there. And when I was leaving, we had just this gorgeous sunshiny morning with snow everywhere. And in Boise, we have the foothills lining basically to the north and northeast of the city. And so I'm driving, back out to my house and just looking at this. I mean, it could be on a Christmas card, like this picture of just the snow covered foothills and, everything sparkling because the sun is shining on it. And there's just something, I don't know. Maybe my parents did a wonderful job. My mom in particular did a wonderful job of the Christmas spirit sort of thing. Like when it's Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, there's something different. There's this energy that's different. And you just have this like warmth and lovely, feeling. And I know that Christmas isn't that way for everybody. And I just really reveled in that, this like a 15-minute drive home. And I just was like, man, I'm so grateful that I have this feeling right now, and that I have this picturesque view of just Christmas. And like I love it. I can't really explain it other than I'm so grateful that I have that feeling of Christmas, because I know that it can be a really hard time for other people. And so I think this was the first time I truly reflected on that myself, and just thought like, man, I really do get this feeling at Christmas time that's special. And I can't really put my finger on why or how that happens, but scenes like that, like the beautiful, foothills kind of helps. So
love it.
That's mine.
Love it. Yep. I love little moments like that just kind of make you reflect on all the good things in your life and gratitude and blessings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Love it. Okay, so real quick, we want to say that this is what a teaser. We've got some changes coming to Middleish.
Yeah. So if you're still
And
listening, if you're not that
yeah,
person that turns it off when we're doing our
yeah,
meening in the mundane,
we'll tell you more about that coming up. We're not
when
going
we figure
anywhere,
it
so
out.
don't worry. Yeah, but we're gonna change how we're doing things a little bit, but we're not going anywhere. So, but just be looking for that in the next month or two. Some changes to
We'll
Middleish.
give you more info
Yeah,
when we sort through the
when we have
details,
it.
when we actually know what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
But as
Something's changing. We
always,
don't know what, but it's changing.
as always, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate your support, and we
Mhm.
hope you had a great holiday season.
Yep. All right. Take care, everybody.
Okay, bye.